Before we get into this, I just wanted to say that this channel exists because of parents like you. And if you're finding these conversations helpful, subscribing really does make a difference. It helps us keep going and bringing voices into the community. So thank you for being here because it really does mean a lot. Enjoy the video. Okay, so welcome, Beth. We're so happy to have you. Could you please introduce yourself and your background as both a professional and a home educator?
Yeah, so my name's Beth Fisher. I've worked in some capacity in education on and off for 6 years, give or take a few months either side. I started working in education in a school setting, so I was a TA in primary school, local primary school. And then I moved into private education a little bit later on, where I've worked in a company supporting home educated and mainstream learners with additional tuition that they require. So I've worked with home educated learners for around the last 3.5 to 4 years. But I'm also a home educating parent myself. So a year ago, I deregistered my own child from school roll, and it's been an experience. But I honestly don't think I would have been able to make that decision and navigate that process without the knowledge and the skills that I'd gained from my professional role.
What happened that led you to decide to home educate?
I think it's quite common with a lot of families that end up doing home education that their child experiences some kind of negativity within a school environment. My own child experienced quite severe bullying. She also has a special educational need, so she had additional needs that weren't met by the school, unfortunately. And I do say, to an extent, it's not the school's fault because there's so many kids and so little resources and so little funding that I'm very lucky to know that I was able to pull her out and offer a provision that would work. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's one of those things. Sometimes those environments can be damaging to them. So we did all of primary school and then 6 months of secondary school before the damage was becoming too much for her.
Shame. And, like you said, there's not that one-on-one support that we want for our kids because the teachers just can't do it. They've got so many kids to take care of, So the kids do unfortunately slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through what actually happens when a family decides to home educate? Where do they even start?
That's a really great question. So it's a little bit tricky because there is sort of a standard process in place, but it looks a little bit different for every family. And it also depends on your location as well. The biggest step is making the decision. That is the bit that I've found in my experience in my job that families struggle with the most. They just don't know if it's the right decision. And that's the thing that causes the most upsetment, I think, within families, is trying to make that decision. And it's fear of the unknown. They don't know what to expect. So once that decision is made, I think the process becomes easier because it feels like a weight's lifted for them. Mm-hmm. The first practical step is to contact the education provider that the child is currently with and request that they be deregistered from school roll. And my advice would be to make sure that this is done in writing of some form, just so there's a record of it. So I did mine by email. Really simple deregistration email. Please remove my child from school roll. And yeah, I think it is important to do by written means because sometimes not all families experience it the way I've experienced it, and there has to be a record of what's been said. Mm-hmm. So some families can experience it in terms of they can feel very supported. So I, unfortunately, am the minority that because the school knew what I did for work and they knew who I was and what I knew, I was not subject to some of the same behaviours that other families are. So other families can feel very pressured when that deregistration email is sent. They could be finding themselves getting responses that request phone calls, that request face-to-face meetings. In some cases, I've even heard them requesting home visits. And that can be really difficult for these families. They didn't try that with me because they knew that I knew it wasn't necessary, and none of that is necessary at all. Or you can send an email, take my child off school roll, and that is all it needs to be. But families that don't necessarily understand the process or have no experience or don't know anybody that's done it will find themselves getting all these messages and all these emails and all these phone calls saying you can't do that, you have to do this first, you have to meet with us. You don't have to do any of that. You absolutely can just deregister your child, draw a line under it. I have had a number of families where mum or dad, both of them in fact, have just sat and cried with me in my previous role, because they felt they've been made to feel like they're doing something wrong by deregistering the child. And that seems to be the general feeling of pulling your child out, is that it's wrong. And it's not. It's absolutely not. You're doing what is best for your child. You're doing it for a reason. There is some kind of barrier to learning there. And unfortunately, the school or the environment at the school has not met your child's needs, and you are absolutely doing the right thing. So don't let anybody make you feel like you're doing the wrong thing. Again, my experience was very different, and there's a lot of fear I find around this process when it comes to educational welfare. So it sounds big and scary. Educational welfare are going to get in touch with you, and oh my goodness, what does that mean? In my local area where I live, the local authority that runs the educational welfare, the officers are lovely. And I've got really good connections and really good contacts within educational welfare who I speak with regularly, and we discuss cases, and I can say, you know what, there's a child, this family are really worried, and they're so accommodating. And it really is a minority case that educational welfare, they do have legal powers, but the situations are rare where they have to use them. So there is something called an attendance order, which can be put through legally, that forces the child to go to school because their educational needs are not being met. It's very, very rare, and there are lots of things that can be done to stop that process and support those kids. What we see time and time again is that the children that have been deregistered from school and that are being home educated, there's always some kind of underlying barrier to their learning, whether it be mental health, it could be an SEN requirement that's not been met, it could be social or factors within the home. So it's about understanding what those barriers to learning were for that child, not forcing their attendance. And that's where we're a little bit different at B&H Tuition, because we aren't going to get on your back. There's no fines. All we want is for your child to progress and enjoy their learning again. So after deregistering, your most important thing is to find your people. Anthill Community is a really good example of your people. So once you start home educating, find those community groups, Facebook, all of the socials, newspapers, anywhere. Put it in Google, what your local resources are for home education support, because there are people out there and they're lovely. It's a lovely community. So obviously there's Anthill Community and there's the Facebook groups and there's services like ours. And yes, we might be a business, but we offer free advice and guidance to families that just don't know what to do. So if you want to deregister your child, or you want to home educate and you just don't know where to start, just give us a ring, drop us an email, and we can absolutely hold your hand and walk you through that process if that's what you need. You don't have to end up coming with us. We don't have to end up providing you with any kind of educational support, but we feel really strongly about helping these families because there is nothing out there. And one last thing I wanted to mention is, depending on the local authority in where you are in the country, some local authorities, when educational welfare get in touch with the family for the first time, they are offered resource packs that tell them what services are in their area, who they can go to, where they can go. However, the local authority where I live don't offer that. And the officers are told that they're not allowed to recommend any services, which is a real shame. So it is very dependent on where you are as to what support you will get. But the consistent support is people like yourselves and people like us. No matter where you are, we can help you. So, yeah, that's the process, I would say. And I think the lifeline is going to be your people.
But that's great, Beth. Thank you. And I think that's the biggest problem that parents have, is that they just don't know where to start. They don't know all of these things. And I think that intimidates them and scares them away from home education. So I think it's great that you're out there and you're willing to help parents, because they really need it. There's either too much noise or there's not enough information. So I think that's great that you are helping them. So what are the options for qualifications, and is it ever too late?
It's absolutely never too late to get a qualification. I'm a massive advocate for lifelong learning. You don't have to be 16, you don't have to be 21, you could be 7. You could be 57. I actually just recently completed a qualification on my own earlier this year in February. I did my management and leadership qualification. I'm 34.
That's amazing.
I don't look 34, about 50. But
no,
I'm a big advocate for consistent learning. It's important. So for young people, Home education removes those pressures of strict timelines. So you don't have to sit exams at 16. You don't have to sit SACS exams at 12. Learners are able to learn at their own pace. They're able to take exams when they're ready, not when the system tells them that they should. And that's a really lovely freedom about home education. I've seen both ends of the spectrum. So I personally have supported a learner as young as 12 who is now 13. He's now got 2 level 2 functional skills equivalent to GCSE, a full 4 years ahead of his peers.
Oh, wow.
Because he's just that kind of kid. He wanted
That's
to just
incredible.
get it done. So he's now 13 years old with GCSE qualifications, which is amazing.
Wow.
The other side of that is I'm still working with learners that are post 16 that didn't sit their GCSEs or haven't got any qualifications yet, and would like to move on to college eventually. There's no, again, you don't have to start college at 16. You can start college at 17. You can start college at 18. I've got one learner that initially wanted to start college at 16, but she didn't feel ready. And I said, there's absolutely no pressure. So then she stayed with me for another year, and gained another qualification, and then went off when she was 17 and she felt more comfortable. And I think it's really important that these learners do stuff when they feel ready, not when they feel pressured.
Exactly.
So yeah, it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. You know, those timelines that are set by institutionalised education are set for children that thrive in that environment, but home education learners have so much freedom. They can sit exams and do qualifications on any subject, anytime. My own daughter's in the process of doing a certificate in horse care.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Because she loves horses.
Oh, lovely.
She's 12, so it gives them freedom to learn things that they enjoy as well, instead of doing like history and geography and things they don't like. They're allowed to learn what they want, which is lovely.
Yes, it's definitely more interest-led, and also just shows that learning never stops. Like we never stop learning, no matter how old we are.
I'm learning right now how podcasts work. So yeah, it's all experience, and it all adds, doesn't it, to your skills and your knowledge. So, and I think it's really rewarding in home education when they're gaining life skills as well as subject knowledge. So, you know, within our functional skills lessons that we do at B&H Tuition, we'll do things like letter writing, email writing, CV writing. We'll do maths in terms of money, in terms of finance, in terms of percentages. So it's all functional maths and English that kids can actually use, instead of Romeo and Juliet and Macbeth that they will never use again in their lives. They'll then be able to send an email for a job application.
What would you say to a parent right now who feels absolutely terrified? Gosh,
the first thing I'd say is take a breath. Just take a deep breath. It's all going to be okay. That's the first thing I would say. And it's what I do say to these families that come and sit in front of me, terrified and upset. I say, just take a deep breath. It's all going to be fine. These decisions are very emotional, and they're supposed to be because they're your child. You know, but it's important to take a step back for a moment and have a look at it objectively. So if your friend came to you and said that their child was experiencing X, Y, and Z, and they wanted to home educate, you would tell your friend, remove your child from that situation. But that's because you're not emotionally attached to them. So you're able to look at it objectively. It's very difficult for families navigating this process to look at things objectively, because that is your child. And I experienced that myself. So I can completely empathise and understand why these families would feel scared making that leap. And it does feel like a leap, but you're not doing anything wrong. So a lot of that terror comes from fear of the unknown, like I said before. But at the end of the day, you're making a decision that is based on your child's needs, and it's important to remember that it's not permanent as well, because nothing is set in stone. You can deregister your child from school and find that actually home education was not the right environment for them. I've had learners that I've supported to reintegrate back into institutionalised education, and it was better for them. They needed that structure and that routine. I'm not against mainstream education. I'm for meeting child's needs. So if that child functions better and thrives better in that environment, absolutely I will support you to do that. If you want help removing your child from that environment, again, B&H can absolutely support you to make that movement. And it's okay. You can try it, you can adapt, you can change direction. Nothing, like I said, is set in stone, and you're not doing it on your own either. It might feel like you're doing it on your own because you may be a mum sat at home on your own, your child is upstairs, upset, doesn't want to go to school tomorrow, and you're just thinking, what am I going to do? Once that decision is made and you think, I'm just going to take them out, honestly, you will feel 10 stone lighter. It was like the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders when I finally said, enough is enough. And then there's next steps, all the practical steps, they're things that you can be supported with. It's that decision that is your decision alone, and I think that's what they struggle with, and what they get scared with is that if something goes wrong, the accountability is on them. but there is nothing that can go wrong. So if it doesn't work, you can go back. It's absolutely fine. Yeah, don't be silly. Find your people, do what needs to be done for your child. If it doesn't work, you can go back. And it might feel really overwhelming right now, but it will be okay. I promise.
Yeah, and that's the thing as well, is that there's so much flexibility. Like you said, if something doesn't work, you can always move to the next thing. And if that doesn't work, you can move to the next thing. And it is really about just listening to your child's needs. So for your child, have you seen improvements in this year that you've taken her out?
It's like having a different child. So the sort of behaviours we were experiencing, there was a lot of low mood, there was a lot of conflict, there was a lot of aggression. And a lot of that was down to frustration of not being able to keep up with her peers academically, but also facing things like bullying. It can have a massive, massive impact on mental health. And the rates of children with really poor mental health are at the highest they've ever been, specifically in teenage girls. So, if your child is experiencing something like this and it's having a detrimental effect, just take them from the environment. There's so many options. Like I said, there's so many places you can go and so many things you can do. And my daughter, she is excited about life again, which is so lovely to see. And I'll come home from being at work and she'll have cooked tea, or she'll have put a wash on because she's learning how to cook. She's learning how domestic skills that kids don't get taught in school. They don't know how to put a wash on. Do they know how to reset the Wi-Fi? Stuff like that. It's all practical skills, and it's stuff that she's enjoying doing as well. She doesn't love cleaning her bedroom, but maybe that's a little lesson in responsibility that we have to teach as well.
Yes. But that's amazing. And I think you see such a breakthrough when the mood is regulated, and then from there you can really just see such a shift.
And she engages so much better now. So she is under the provision of B&H tuition, and again, she's only 12, but she's due to sit her first exam within the next 2 months in maths, because she's brilliant at maths. The difficulties, one of the barriers to learning that my daughter had was that she's quite severely dyslexic. So it doesn't just affect English. Every lesson that has words in it, so science, history, geography, any lesson that required reading or writing of any kind, she fell behind in. It has a massive impact when they can't keep up with their friends. And now she's made a lovely little group of friends within our organisation that are all at the same ability level as well. So we try and teach our lessons with children at the same level as them. So yeah, there might be a massive range in ages, but it means that they can all work together and nobody's further ahead than the other. And it's a lovely little community. I've got a really lovely group of kids, and they all get on really well, which is really nice.
That's great. So that's amazing to hear that she's just flourishing. It's really working for her then.
Yeah, it's the best thing I've ever done, and I've heard the parents say it.
So that's amazing. Thank you so much, Beth.